And I'm going to go ahead and let people from the waiting room. Okay. And hello. I know that Shaden, we just let you in from the waiting room, and we're going to be allowing people to kind of show up late, and they'll be popping in. But we're going to go ahead and get this thing kicked off. My name is Tony Castanerio, and I'm going to just share my screen for just a second as we start this thing, and then I will share it back to our professor in just a moment here. So we'll get this. And this way we'll test things out on my end too. So can everyone see my screen? So perfect. My name is Tony Castanerio. I'm the Director of Recruitment here with Willamette University MBA programs. And I'm going to be your host. And we have a special evening tonight. We have Professor Ashley Nixon, who's going to be speaking. And I'm going to introduce her in just a second. But I wanted to introduce my team. So for all of you out there virtually that have been letting me know that you cannot make it and you wanted to meet the admissions team and you wanted to really meet our professor. So we have a couple slides to kind of intro people so everybody knows who everybody is. So I'm Tony Castanerio, my Assistant Director of Recruitment, Nate Nagy, and my other Assistant Director of Recruitment, Marley Nicasio. Marley will actually be in attendance here this evening, and Nate unfortunately could not make it tonight, but our contact information is on our website, which should be up and running hopefully soon. And you'll get that information at the end of this webinar as well. So without further ado, we're going to kick this off, and I'm going to introduce Professor Ashley Nixon, and she's going to be speaking tonight about a hot topic of individual peak performance, aligning our lives and careers with our values, purpose, and strengths. Ashley was actually my professor when I went through the MBA for Professionals program. She's awesome. She's a professor of HR management and organizational behavior. She's a great contact and resource. So students that are always asking me, can I meet a professor? Is there someone else I can talk to? I actually just got that question right before this event started. Ashley's a great contact and would be a great person to run ideas off of when they're looking at different types of graduate programs. And without further ado, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. And I'm going to allow you to go ahead and kick this thing off.
All right. Thanks so much for the lovely introduction. I'm going to share some slides real quick. All right, so I want to talk to you about something that I am particularly passionate about just because it impacts all of us, right? Who doesn't want to be more effective, constant improvement, all of those types of things. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about peak performance. And I wanted to start with some context about why this is so important. So up here, we've got kind of what we do performance-wise, given a certain amount of stimulation. So at the bottom, we've got kind of arousal, stimulation, pressure, thinking about those kinds of things. Down here at the bottom of performance, we have the drone zone. And the way I like to think about this is we've all had those weekends where you have one thing to do. That's it, just one thing that you need to accomplish that weekend. And it gets to Sunday night and you haven't done it. And so I like to think about that as that way of like, there's just not enough pressure, not enough stimulus, not enough arousal for me to actually perform something. So we need a certain amount of this pressure to feel like we need to start doing things and actually be productive. We eventually push our way up through performance improving, through the C zone. And that's where we kind of feel like we're crushing it. Like, I am getting so much done. I am just amazing this week. And that's the really great feeling. But just like athletes, where this term peak performance comes from, we can't stay at that high level all day, every day. Our body takes some amount of recovery. The same way we wouldn't train to run a marathon by running marathons every day. We can't do that with the rest of our lives either. So what ends up happening is we tilt down the other side of this into exhaustion and ill health. When we get really stressed, it suppresses our immune system functioning. And so it's not just you, like if you have that feeling of like, I was getting so much done, I was doing great, I was so stressed, and then I got a cold. Yes, That is exactly the line that all of this happens into. And as many of us got to experience during COVID, burnout, and all the terrible things that accompany it. So the idea of peak performance is that we keep ourselves in this area of creative calm, where we're performing highly, we feel pressured, but in a good way, recognizing when it goes too far, when we get into that fatigue zone, and those behaviors that help us pull back from that edge of tipping off the side of exhaustion. So that provides some context about why this is so important. When we talk about peak performance, I've heard this term that is taken from athletics, right? That idea that I want to deliver my peak performance activity at this game, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the etc. I have trained all year for this game. Clearly, we are applying this bizarrely to our own lives, as though we should be able to do that every day. We really can't. So breaking down what we mean from this, it's continuously improving. It's getting better all the time. It's being productive, and it's showing resiliency. But I also like to think of it as creating that sense of balance that allows us to keep moving forward. And so here are the components that allow us to get to that balance. And so I'm going to talk about each of these, and I'm going to try to give you some helpful hints in every category of how to just get a little bit more peak performance from yourself. So on the first side, we have behavior. And we're going to talk about particularly some wellness behaviors that are kind of just our baseline floor. Without that, the rest of it doesn't really matter. We'll talk about some productivity habits. We're going to move over to thoughts, where we're going to concentrate on reframing as well as developing our confidence. Then we'll slide down to emotions, where we'll be talking about keeping our positivity up and building strong relationships with others. And then we'll end on talking about our values and strengths and why it's so important to be able to recognize those things and deploy those throughout all areas of our lives. I'm going to talk about a lot of examples in the school and work setting, but most of the stuff you'll see can be deployed anywhere and everywhere. And I suggest, yes, do that anywhere and everywhere. The more you practice, the better you get at it, the more of a habit it becomes, and the better off you are. So first, with our behavior, wellness, what do I mean by this? I mean sleeping enough, eating healthy foods, getting exercise. So when we're talking about sleeping enough, most adults need between 7 and 8 hours of sleep a night. Some of us need more, some of us might need a little bit less. But if you're one of those people who says, I only need 3 or 4 hours of sleep a day, evidence has showed you're just going to die earlier. Don't do that. If you wake up after 3 or 4 hours, that's totally fine. Chances are you just need another 3 or 4 hour nap some other time during the day. That is a normal sleep cycle, but only sleeping 3 or 4 hours can have really detrimental impacts on your health as you age. So I deeply encourage us to take control of whatever it is. Most of us have a time we have to get up in the morning. The part that we can actually control is when we go to bed. So I deeply encourage people to think about what are the steps that I can take to have a healthy bedtime. Eating well, this for me is not an extreme diet. What we're talking about here is the idea of getting whole foods. Probably all of us could use a little bit more vegetables in our lives, lean proteins. You don't have to become vegan. It's just finding that most processed thing that you eat the most frequently and seeing if you can replace it with something healthier, but thinking about how we can make those healthy substitutions. And then lastly, exercise. Again, I am never going to be an Olympic athlete. Jeremy said he noticed the moment he turned 28 and realized almost all professional athletes were now younger than him, and how disturbing that was. But that's not what we're going for here. Most of the time, we can exercise for 30 minutes a day, 3, 4, 5 times a week, and really get the benefits of it. And so this could be going for a walk. This could be some mild weightlifting. This could be yoga or dance, whatever it is that works for you, going for a jog, just getting some activity in our daily lives. The next section I wanted to bring up was problem solving. For many of us, and we'll talk about this a little bit with reframing, but being able to identify when we have a problem, not dwelling on it, not ruminating on it, deciding, is this something I can fix? And if so, how? Let me go do that. Or is this something I can't fix? And if so, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to dwell. I'm not going to ruminate. I'm just going to keep going. And then lastly, we have productivity. And I hope that you all use tools like calendars and to-do lists. But if you don't, I highly, highly encourage you to look into how to use these tools effectively. For most of us, to-do lists are the biggest pillar of our productivity systems. We can do those better by chunking, taking really big tasks and pulling them into 15-minute increments. And also by prioritizing. I know I could get this done, but this is actually the thing that's most important for me today. So if you do to-do lists, try those 2 steps to develop this a little bit further, that continuous improvement, breaking big tasks into short ones, and prioritizing them so the most important things get done quickly. Moving on to thoughts. So this is an area, it's been referred to as cognitive resiliency, mental toughness. These are actually the skill sets that let us be resilient when we're confronted with things that could otherwise set us back. And what I want to specifically talk to you about today is the act of reframing. So what do I mean by that? When I like to think about reframing, I think about the stories that we tell ourselves and the fact that we get to control those stories. So if I'm driving down the interstate and I get cut off, I can tell myself a story, right? I can tell myself a story that this person's a jerk. I can ramp myself up into full anger. I'm sure we've all seen those people who feel like they've been mistreated on the interstate and they're just, their hands are going, their head's going, they're yelling in their car. And they are telling themselves a story that has literally just ruined their day. I could also tell myself, oh, that person's in a hurry. Or, you know what? I bet they have someone having a baby at the hospital. They better get there quickly. Right? And I get to save myself that anger. I get to save myself all of those problems because I chose to tell myself a different story. So there's different ways that we can apply this reframing. The first is to our irrational thoughts. We all have these. Sometimes this gets to the point where it's catastrophic thinking. If you have things that happen in your life and you experience a level of anxiety that you're kind of aware is not entirely proportionate to what is happening, chances are that's catastrophic thinking. And this is oftentimes where our brain just goes 0 to 10. Oh my gosh, I've made a mistake. I'm not going to be successful. People are going to see through me. I'm a fraud. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to end up sleeping in my car, right? Like you're responding to this small mistake as though you've just lost everything that mattered to you. And chances are at the root of that is an irrational thought. And so I had experience of this a few years ago. I was sitting in this office, in fact, getting really, really anxious as I was preparing for a class. And so I sat down and I started writing down my thoughts, and they got really rational really quickly. But I could also tell it wasn't the small, easy thoughts, right? Like the things like, I want to do well. The level of anxiety that I was feeling in my traps was not commiserate with, I want to do well. The level of anxiety I was feeling in my traps was, I think I might lose everything if I don't do well. And so then I was able to start going through all those thoughts and reframing them. What's going to happen if tonight doesn't go well? I'll try something different next week. What's going to happen if this semester doesn't go well? I'll try something different next semester and probably be more successful. What's going to happen if I can't figure out how to do this job? Well, I'll just change jobs. Right. And so I was able to go back and tell myself a different story for each of those. And in that way, take away that anxiety. The other one that I particularly wanted to call out to you was negative thoughts, and specifically self-criticism. This is something that a lot of high-performing people do. And we tell ourselves a specific story when we do this to ourselves, which is, I have to hold myself to this high standard because without me holding myself to this standard, no one else is going to. How am I going to be able to perform as well as I ought to? This is what's allowing me to achieve. Uh, it turns out that's not actually the way that this works, and it makes a lot of sense. If you imagine talking to your best friend the way that you talk to yourself, would you think that they would respond to your negative talk by saying, gosh, you know what? You're right. Thanks for holding me to a high standard. I'm going to go perform and achieve. Chances are, and I've asked people this repeatedly, if I talk to other people the way I talk to myself, I could likely expect them to throw something at me, start crying, and or leave the area. And so it turns out we respond to our own negative self-talk in that exact same way. We are much more likely to exhibit depressed mood. We are much more likely to exhibit increased anxiety. Um, and so here I want us to start thinking about reframing, not irrational to rational, but critical to kind. How can I talk to myself as though I were talking to my best friend? How can I talk to myself in a way that is developmental and encouraging so that I am more likely to go do more and better in the future than the opposite, right? Sitting here and watching Netflix and eating ice cream or whatever it is we do when we experience depressed mood. So here are some of the key ways that we can start thinking about reframing. And then we have some lenses that we can reframe through. So the first one is the reverse lens, and that is trying to take the other person's perspective. How would I feel if this had happened to me? We also have the wide lens, where we're able to kind of say, what can I learn from this experience? This is one of my favorite ones to use at the end of the day when I have not been as effective as I would have preferred. Rather than beating up on myself for being lazy or wasting time or whatever, I instead just say, what's the one thing that I can take away from today and do differently tomorrow? Right? And so that's this wide lens. What can I learn from this experience? We have the evaluative lens. And this is kind of getting to that idea of what's the most likely outcome. When we have those catastrophic thoughts, that is, the odds of that actually happening are incredibly low. And so the example I gave was pulling myself back to a much more normative, like, is tonight going to go that terribly that I lose everything in my life? No, of course not. It's also not going to go so wonderfully that like suddenly they crown me the queen of instruction or whatever. And so that would be that other end as equally unlikely. And in that kind of pulling ourselves to the middle of like, what's the most likely outcome? Well, I'll do fine and probably want to improve, right? And then finally, we have the long lens. And this one gets easier and easier as you get older. That's saying, how am I going to feel about this in 6 months? How am I going to feel about this in 5 years? Is this going to matter to me at all? Many of the stressors that we have on a day-to-day basis end up not actually mattering to us in the long run. And if we can have that thought in the moment of like, I am so upset about this now, and 6 months from now, I will not care. Uh, that gives us a lot of ability to start reframing this and using these things when they happen to us as a way to grow and develop, as opposed to letting it drag down. Then we have our emotions. We have a ton of research that shows that we work best when we're experiencing positive emotions, but we physiologically are not created in a way that allows us to just be joyous all the time. It is an activated emotion, and so it makes us tired. And so we want to think about, one, how do I increase my daily positivity? But two, what can I do that allows me to recover? right? To kind of get my energy back after feeling these emotions. So on the first side, I want to talk about controlling these strong emotions. When we need to recover, we can engage in a variety of practices. One, just deep breathing. What this does is it takes our body into a state of relaxation out of a state of stress. And so it calms our heartbeat. It gets more blood into or more oxygen into our blood, not blood into our oxygen. That'd be terrible. So we want to take those moments to have those few calming breaths. If any of you also have an Apple Watch on here, those are great for if I feel myself getting stressed, if I feel myself getting antsy, I'll just put my breathe on for a minute or two and try to recenter. We can also, a more advanced form of this would be meditation. Research on meditation is continuously demonstrating that it's incredibly important to resiliency, well-being, and maintaining peak performance. I will also acknowledge that I am not a great meditator. I've never quite made it a daily habit. It is something that I go to when I get stressed, angry, or frustrated. But I haven't quite gotten to the point where I'm just like, I meditate every day, which would probably be like my aspirational goal, right? But looking into if you don't already meditate, if you do already meditate, good for you. And if you do it every day, I'm jealous. If you don't meditate, I would highly recommend looking into some apps like Calm or Headspace. They do some really nice introductory meditations. And what we find is even meditating for 1 to 5 minutes a day has a substantial impact on our ability to be resilient and to keep our mood elevated when we're in very difficult times. And then lastly, we can journal. This ends up being a way, one, it can help us identify those irrational thoughts as they come up. But two, it can be incredibly powerful to write down positive things that have happened to you throughout the day. Human brains have what's called a negativity bias. When we're presented with neutral information, we interpret it as though it's a threat, and so we respond to it as though we need to protect ourselves. And what this means is that we have heightened threat awareness all the time. And so stopping our brains and concentrating on the positive and the good things that happen start to bring us back to that equilibrium of a lot of the things in our lives are really good. We concentrate on the negative. The negatives stand out to us. The negative is what we dwell on, but we can change that through activities like journaling and give ourselves that ability to respond to our lives as we're actually living it. And then finally, we have the increase happiness side. I've already mentioned exercise. It is fantastic as a mood elevator, as well as a sense of pride. If I've exercised 4 or 5 times a week, I have such a sense of pride. Two, great one for Oregon, enjoy nature. It turns out that there is really something magical for our brains, for our emotions, when we walk around outside, even if it's just a tree-lined area. If you're stuck in a library, try to sit next to a window where you can see nature. It has a real restorative power for us. And the last one I wanted to mention, this is one of my favorites because it's just positive all around, positive for our relationships, positive for us. Expressing gratitude. When we express gratitude, of course, we typically tell someone that we're grateful for something that they did, which makes them feel good. It makes them feel recognized and seen and all those wonderful things. But it turns out it makes us who just expressed gratitude feel even better than the person who received it. We feel good about ourselves. We think highly of ourselves. We get this rush. Another way that we can express gratitude is through something like a daily gratitude journal. I did this for probably about 6 months and noticed a fairly substantial impact on the way I thought about my life and the world, where every morning I would write down in a journal 3 things that I was grateful for and 3 things that I was excited about. And it was really lovely. Sometimes those things were very simple. Like today, I was very grateful that it was beautiful and sunny when I was downstairs with my dogs in the morning. And other days it'll be bigger things, like not having substantial health issues at my age, right? So thinking about big things and tiny things really starts to put us in tune with the fortune that we have in our lives. And then we get to worry about improving our relationships. The first goes back to reframing with the idea of assuming good intentions. When we're in relationships, we get a choice to tell ourselves a story that is negative, that is in the threat mentality, that is telling us we need to be on our guard, and we get to do the opposite of that if we want. We get to stop ourselves and say, what's the best possible story that I could tell myself to explain what it is that I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing? And if we start with that, Tony, I'll use you as an example. I don't like this thing that happened, but I know Tony, and I know Tony wouldn't have done it just because he wanted to thwart me, right? So whatever initial thought, my little negativity bias in my brain may come up, I can come back and say, no, that's ridiculous. I know him, and I know he's going to do things that he is trying to help. So if I'm seeing it in a different light, that needs to be a subject of a conversation rather than me assuming that I know someone's out to get me or something. And I don't want to say that so clownishly that it sounds like people don't think that way or that they should feel oddly if they think that way. We all think that way. It typically takes a lot of work for us to get back to this idea of assuming good intentions. The second thing we can do to improve our relationships is to ask for help. I do this all the time, and I ask people, if you like to help others, raise your hand. Typically 95% of the room will raise their hand. And then I say, how many of you like to ask for help? And approximately 5% of the people will raise their hand. Nobody likes to ask for help, but everyone likes giving it. And so I'd like to suggest a reframe for this as well. When we don't ask people for help, we know some of the outcomes, right? We know that we end up wasting some of our own time. We perhaps procrastinate because we don't know what to do. When we ask for help, we also stop others from being able to form meaningful relationships with us. The baseline of relationships begins at something called the norm of reciprocity. And the idea that is foundational to our society is that our trust and our relationships are built on the fact that when I do something for you, you then do something for me. And if you've ever experienced this, someone will do something for you and you almost feel guilty until you've had the opportunity to do something back for them. When we ask for help, we already know 95% of people want to help us. They like helping. We're giving them an opportunity to do something that they like. And we're starting that norm of reciprocity where now the door is open for them to come and ask me for help too. And I like helping because I'm also part of the 95% who enjoys that. So the small act of asking for help ends up not only helping us actually do what we need to do instrumentally, but it allows other people to feel useful, to be useful, and starts to build our relationship. Listening is one of the most important things that we can do in our relationships. We can't always fix everyone's problems, but when people become the most distressed is when they feel as though their problems are being ignored or not understood. So the simple act of listening and trying our best to understand what it is that people need, what they want, what their problems are, whether we can fix it or not, at least we can get to that point of mutual understanding and empathy. And then lastly, we want to try our best to keep commitments. I like to say either keep commitments or communicate around your inability to. Most people are not mad just because a ball gets dropped, right? If I'm late delivering something to a colleague and I say, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm running late, I should get this to you by Friday. They may be a little frustrated, but they're not that mad. When they get mad is when that Friday has gone by, they haven't heard from me. It's now the following Tuesday, and they're having to follow up with me to find out what went on. So keeping commitments to the best of our ability and communicating when we can't. A special side of this is one of the reasons many of us sometimes have trouble keeping commitments is we say yes to too many things. Or really the important thing is that we fail to say no. So my reframe here, this might be old news to some of you, but to keep in mind that whenever we say yes to something, we are in fact saying no to something else. And oftentimes what we're saying no to is our friends, our family, and ourselves. No, I won't have time to exercise. No, I won't have time to sleep. No, I won't have time to make sure that I'm eating healthy food. And what that means is that we are taking away the foundation of our ability to perform and be in this area of peak performance. So realize when you say yes to something, you are in fact saying no to something else. And we need to be careful about what our priorities are here. If you are someone who does not say no, then I would like to challenge you to not say yes to anything for at least a week. You don't necessarily have to say no. It's a hard one to get to sometimes, but you do have to sub in something that isn't a yes. My favorite go-to is, let me check my calendar and get back to you on that. And I apologize if you hear something in the background. I've got a car alarm going off outside my house. Another thing that ends up bringing us a lot of positive energy and a lot of meaningfulness throughout our lives, I think the slide was actually supposed to be after the next one, but that's okay, is working from a place of our strengths. These we have to be able to identify for ourselves. There are some assessments that can help us, but one of the things that I want to most importantly stress with you is that a strength is not just performance. It's not just something that you're good at. When we think about our strengths, we want to think about the things that give us energy, that make us feel fulfilled, that we look forward to. If it's something that you are good at and you hate, it is not a strength. That is something that's going to make you feel drained at the end of it. And so the idea here is that's actually a weakness because it weakens you. The activities that you're good at and you're drawn to strengthen you. And so those are your strengths. And so it's good to think about when you are moving through tasks, moving through classes, identify these things that you're a little excited about. You enjoy doing the homework for that one or the tasks associated with this one. If you like public speaking, if you like data analysis, what are the things, if you like writing or editing, what are the things that make you feel interested and successful? And then try to build up your ability to do more of those things moving forward. And then another one, thinking about our strengths and our accomplishments and our confidence, is achieving goals. We want to be able to set goals and then accomplish them. It is wonderful for our self-confidence, wonderful for our positive emotions. And if we can align those with our strengths, what we end up doing is making our strengths so skilled that more and more of our job, more and more of our participation on teams is going to be allocated to these areas that we're truly excellent in that are also our strengths. So identify what your strengths are and then think about how you can hone those through accomplishing goals in a way that allows you to meaningfully pursue them. And the bedrock for all of this is getting to living in alignment with our meaning. So here you have to ask yourself some really important questions. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And which values are the most important to you? And I'm very careful to say which values are the most important to you, because it turns out we all value many, many, many things. If I make you choose your top 5 values, which I made Tony do when he took class with me, it is far more important than saying, do these 25 things matter to you? Are these 20 values important to you? It turns out yes. But when you actually have to choose what your most important values are, it really starts to tell you something about yourself. And so this is a task of deep personal exploration. But I have a personal pet hypothesis. I've not tested this. Okay, so everything else I've said so far is very evidence-based. This one is just a personal pet hypothesis. I think a lot of people end up experiencing midlife crises because they spend their first half of their life pursuing goals that are put in front of them by other people, right? They adopt society's goals as their own. And so, what are my goals? Well, it's to get a good job, to get a promotion, to get a good title, to make a lot of money. And then, if we've done that or not, we hit the midpoint in our life and we say, what is the purpose of this? Why is this important to me? And here's where we have to start thinking, who do I want to be in my community? How do I want to align that persona in my community with my job? How does the mission of my organization matter to me as a person? How does the task that I do at work bring meaning to my life? And so, from this area, looking at this perspective, what are my values? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do with my time? We can start pulling in this idea of our personal mission statement. And this is where we start finding true meaning in our lives. It doesn't mean that we all need to go and just volunteer all the time. No, of course not. I work for a university. Unsurprisingly, my personal mission statement has a lot to do with developing future leaders of tomorrow, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to make massive changes in our lives. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it means we have to reframe and start thinking about the things in our life differently and thereby make different choices. And so there is my drive-by, very fast, quick tips on how to improve our behavior, thoughts, emotions, and purpose to be able to maximize our peak performance and stay at this high level of performance, not falling off into exhaustion and not falling off into sheer boredom.
Thank you, Ashley. And right now, we're going to go ahead and take some questions. If anybody has any, I'm going to kind of look through the chat. And so, yes, for those that are asking about admissions questions, we'll get to those here in just a little bit. One of the things I wanted to say, listening to Ashley talk, she talks about, gratitude journals and affirmations and things like that. What's interesting is, it's not just in your professional life, but in your personal life could make a huge difference. I actually utilize a lot of that stuff in my own life with my family and my children, and doing the gratitude journal with my kids and doing affirmations has been one of the most positive experiences, especially you talk about early mornings and having to get up and having to get into routines, and how do you overcome, children going through the same ruts that adults go through. And it's amazing when you start doing those affirmations and gratitude. What are you thankful for? What matters most? And then kind of getting into those routines makes a positive impact on their daily experience as well. So I think this stuff really, really seeps over into your personal life as well as professional. And I think it could bring a lot of value and help people in their professional lives when they come to work with better attitudes and all that good stuff. So I really appreciate this stuff. Resonates with me. I think this was a great talk. I remember listening to this stuff in class, and so it's very useful. And Ashley, we're so appreciative of you being here. So thank you for sharing those thoughts with us and expertise. And the questions I'm seeing, and in fact, people are emailing, a lot of it is admissions type stuff right now. So less questions about the talk. So what I'm thinking, Ashley, is maybe we'll switch over and transition. I'll share my slides again, And then you're more than welcome, Ashley, to stick around, or if you have to go, it's totally up to you. I'm going to kind of get into my admissions talk.
I have one question from Marley in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
What do you do when your job doesn't align with your personal mission statement? It depends. So I'm a professor. It's actually very hard to change jobs being a professor. So I would start with the mental work of, can I think about this differently? Can I engage in slightly different tasks at work in a different way that make me feel more meaningful? I mentioned that my personal mission statement is concerned with trying to improve the world by equipping young people to achieve their goals in a way that improves the psychological well-being of workplaces. So it actually makes it sometimes easy in decision making, right? If I get approached about administration, there's very few administrative jobs on campus that would be aligned with that particular mission statement. And so it makes it easier for me to say, oh, no, that's not for me. I'm actually doing the thing that matters the most to me by being in the classroom. My brother is in sales. It is incredibly easy for him to change jobs. So he has a lot more flexibility. If he decides this organization is not aligned with the things that I want to accomplish in this world, it doesn't align with my values, I can go find an organization that does, or a role within an organization that does. I typically am a committed person. I like people. It's hard for me to end relationships if anyone's with me in that boat. And so I'm always going to be the person who says, can I make this work before I move on? But depending on the role that you're in and the job you're in, sometimes moving around is flexible. And I do think there are some benefits if we get stuck in a rut. We can just go work for someone else for a while and maybe come back later when we feel a little bit less rutted.
Well, that's great. Any other questions for Professor Nixon? This would be a great time to throw it in the chat.
And if anything
right.
comes up later, I'm happy to connect with anyone and follow up for personal questions. I will go ahead and take off, Tony, and let you move into the rest of your information. But thank you all for joining me tonight. And I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And we're going to kind of get into some of the admissions talks. And I just kind of wanted to point out to everybody our programs and kind of just rehash who we are. So a lot of questions that I saw early, and I've been emailed, where, our admissions officer is going to be there. Myself and Marley are both admissions representatives, and we're talking about Willamette MBA programs. We're located in both Portland and Salem. So those are about a little less than 50 miles away from each other. Our main campus in Salem. We do have a Portland Center location. And the programs that we offer are full-time MBA. It's called our Early Career Change program. And underneath that program, we have kind of some subsets. We have a dual degree 3-2 BA MBA, and that's really for students that are in our undergrad program that are trying to do both their bachelor's and their master's. We have a 1-year MBA. It's really an honors type MBA program. There's a lot of requirements that students would have to meet to get into that program, designed for people that are really in their undergrad, but they already have a job lined up. They're really high performers, and they need to get that degree as fast as possible to get their job. That's what that program is designed to do. We have a traditional 4-2 in our early career. So it's a traditional kind of 2-year MBA program. It's 21 months. And then we have a joint degree, 2 joint degree programs. We have an MBA combined with a master's in data science program. And for international students, that is a program that they're most interested in because it is STEM designated. And then we also have a joint degree with our law school, so a JD MBA. And those would be our full-time programs. And then our part-time program is, it's really full-time as far as, credits are looked at, but it's part-time in the evenings, and that's our MBA for professionals. So some programs will call that their executive MBA program, and that's for working professionals working here in the United States that are looking to go back and get their MBA. And so why would you choose a Willamette MBA? What's the difference between us and Portland State or the University of Oregon? First off, we're the #1 ranked MBA in the state of Oregon. We're consistently ranked high in Business Week, Forbes, Poets and Quants, the Princeton Review, and I believe our rankings are always in the top 100. I think it's in the 70s right now in some of these. And so there's about 5,000 MBA programs in the world. And so being ranked in the top 100, that's where we want to be. And then being #1 in Oregon, #2 in the Pacific Northwest, only to the University of Washington, that says a lot. You know, we're competing against a lot of different types of schools, big schools. And so it's a great MBA program. And we're dual accredited. We have a for-profit accreditation through the AACSB, which is the gold standard. Again, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all AACSB accredited. So are we. But we also have this NASPA accreditation. And that's because we're dual accredited for-profit as well as not-for-profit and government work. And we used to be one of only 2 in the country that had this dual accreditation. We may be the only one now. And so for students that are interested in working for a not-for-profit or starting a not-for-profit or want to do government work, state or federal, this is a great way to learn about public service. You're getting traditional MBA skills, but you're also learning about that public service and part of the industry. And so we do a lot of cross-sectoral teaching in this program. And again, that's very unique to our MBA. And then the MBA, you know, in general, why would you get an MBA? Transferable skills, especially at a place like Willamette. We just mentioned we're dual accredited. So we see our graduates kind of dabble across different industries. Some will work for a large company for profit, like an Intel or a Nike or a Garmin. And then others want to start their own not-for-profit or work for a not-for-profit, or they want to work for the government. And so we'll see students take internships and jobs in both types of industries because they get those skills at a place like Willamette. And then you enrich your professional experience. You go through an MBA program, you network, you meet a lot of different people. We are a in-person cohort model. And Marley, feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything. But in that cohort model, you're going to meet different people, but we're also forcing you and pushing you all the time to go meet other people, meet people in different industries. For younger students in our full-time program, it's all about getting an internship. It's all about getting yourself in front of different alumni. And really, the more people you meet, the more that network grows. And that's how you're going to enrich that professional experience. And then for our MBA for professionals, you know, you're going to enrich that experience really in that classroom and then also through other events that we do at Willamette. We do a lot of different networking events. We have panel discussions. There's a lot of different ways on top of just being in class to go ahead and enrich that experience. And then obviously people want to get an MBA for that salary potential. You know, it's still a proven true way. If you're trying to climb the ladder and you want to make 6 figures or more, this is still the MBA is going to put you in position to do that. So, and then Marley, again, if you go ahead.
Yep. I do have something to note. I think one thing that really sets us apart from other MBA programs is you typically have to have some sort of business background to leverage yourself in the application process. But I think one thing to note when applying to us is you don't need any specific major background. I was a biology major, and a lot of people in my cohort were all sorts of backgrounds, and it wasn't just econ or business. So I think that's one thing to note, to not let that hold you back when thinking about submitting your app.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Marley. So, and that's another thing that does separate us from other schools is we'll often get that question from students. Do I have to have a business administration degree to get the MBA at your school? Do I have to have these econ classes or statistics classes? And the answer is no, you do not have to have those classes because we really take a kind of a ground level approach when you get in the program. So we're looking for motivated students. We're looking for professionals that are really inspired to gain new skills and either climb the ladder or they're trying to make a change. And so some of the classes that we offer, especially our younger students are very interested in these classes, and our professional students are starting to become more and more interested, are these experiential and what we call consequential learning courses that we offer. And not every MBA program is going to offer these types of courses. And what we mean by experiential and consequential is that the things that you are doing in these types of classes, a lot of it is you're dealing with real situations, real money. It's no longer theoretical. So as examples here, we have Angel Fund, O'Neill Investment Fund, this PACE class, Philanthropic Investment for Community Impacts. Well, when you look at the Angel Fund, and I always use this as an example because it's like Shark Tank. Okay, if you've seen the movie Shark Tank, it's angel investing, where basically you've got Willamette has money every year. It's like $150,000 to $200,000 that our students go and they actually invest. And so we fly our students to different cities, whether it be Seattle or LA, and you're meeting with investors. You're also being coached up by your professors and these investors to invest in certain companies. And these companies are coming to you students and they're making their pitch. And then you're like the sharks and you've got to be able to distribute that money. And so again, real world, real problems that you guys are using, real situations, and you can use this experience and you can put things like this on a resume. The O'Neill Investment Fund is another great example. Real money. You're actually doing portfolio investments. Again, every year there's a set aside amount of money that Willamette has, again, $150,000, whatever it is, and you guys are investing this in the stock market, and you guys are having to show why you made these decisions and defend those decisions. And so the PICI, the Philanthropic Investment for Community Impact class, another great example, where students that want to learn more about public service and these not-for-profits, well, now we have grant money that we're actually distributing to a certain amount of these not-for-profits that are applying for this grant money. And they're coming to Willamette every year, and our students are having to make the decision. These people are throwing their pitch in front of them, and they're distributing those funds. So again, these are just some examples of our experiential learning classes. And for students that are in the full-time program, you have to take, I believe it's at least 8 credits, 2 classes that you have to take in experiential learning. And in our MBA for Professionals program, you're not required to take one of these courses, but what we're seeing is an uptick. And these are only 4 examples. We have other classes like this, but we're seeing an uptick in the professional students because they want to add this to their resume. They think it's going to help them in the position that they're at, or maybe they're trying to make that shift. So I just kind of throw this slide up here almost all the time when we have these webinars, because students want to know whether you're MBAP or your early career, what's the curriculum look like? What do the classes look like? And right now we're preparing for our fall start for both the MBA for Professionals and the Early Career Change program. And that's going to happen. Classes begin the week of August 26th. And so if you're an MBAP, this is kind of what it's going to look like. Your first semester, you have 2 classes per semester. It's a total of 6 semesters. So we have a fall, a spring, and then we have a summer semester. And then we start again, fall, spring, summer. And these are kind of what it looks like. And why I put this up here is to show you that in our executive program or professionals program, you have your traditional MBA courses. You have some what we call hard skill type classes where you're going to have accounting, you're going to have finance, you're going to have marketing. Then you have soft skills too. You're going to have leadership, you're going to have managing teams and organizations, you're going to be taking strategic management. And so you're building both skill sets. And then you have elective choices that you're going to be able to utilize. And so starting in your 4th semester, you get to start choosing. You have 2 elective choices in that semester, and then you have 1 in your 5th. And basically those electives, you could choose experiential learning courses, or you could go down the rabbit's hole of what you're really interested in. And if those are finance classes or accounting classes or marketing, you're going to have an option of those classes to choose from. And then if you're an early career change MBA person, so you're right out of undergrad, or you're trying to make a total shift in your career and you're going back to school, so your first year in this program is going to be much more like a traditional MBA. You're going to take all those courses like in a professionals program, accounting and finance and econ, and you're going to really knock those all out in your first year. In your second year in the program, it's almost all elective choices. And so for those students that are interested in dual degrees, if you're interested in the MBA and the data science program, and you want that STEM designation, you're an international student, or you want that JD MBA, the way it works is in that second year, you can see it's almost all elective courses, minus 2 required courses, the politics and public policy and the strategic management. Everything else is electives. So it would be in that year, in your second year, if you were doing a dual degree with us, that you would start substituting in classes from those other programs. And in the case of our MBA MSDS, the data science program, you would take 4 different data science classes there, and those would count towards the 9 total classes in the data science program, masters. And so really, if you did that combo program, it's the 21 months plus 1 extra semester, and then you walk out with 2 degrees. If you do the JD MBA program, you can either start with the JD program in your first year, and then you come to us in your second year, and then you start sprinkling in those elective courses in years 3 and 4 when you're at law. Or you can start with the MBA and then go back to law for the next 3 years and sprinkle in those kind of elective courses to finish up. So either way you slice it, whatever program that you're looking at, this is kind of how it's able to be worked, because in the full-time program, you have more credits that you have to complete, 60 total, versus the MBA for professionals, it's 48. But this is how it works in those programs. And then another reason to join the Willamette community is that we have a career management team. For the full-time program, it's built into some of your coursework. For the professionals program, they're there at your disposal. If you want to get together with our career management team to look at different options, and you're not settled on the one employer that you're at, and you want to beef up your resume, or you want to practice mock interviews, or you're in the full-time program and you want to go on a trek to go visit a company, our career management team is pushing our students all the time to find out what it is that you're passionate about, what you want to be successful with, and how they can help you. And then the other thing that you can utilize is our MBA for life. Once you graduate from Willamette's MBA program, you're going to be able to use this program anytime you need to beef up your resume. You can come back to our career management team. You can go ahead and ask questions, and they'll be there for you. So another added bonus. And the final thing before I get into questions is how to apply. All of our application is done online. If there's any troubles with any links, there's been some internet kind of wonkiness going around the country right now. Please contact our admissions team, and I'll give you guys all of our contact information here. But the application is free for both programs. You fill it out online. We do ask that everybody schedule an interview with us, and so we would love to schedule those interviews with our senior associate dean. And the way you kick the process off is you start the application, you upload your resume, and literally we can schedule that interview right away. And the interview is not used to weed you out. It's used more as an informational interview. We want to get to know you. We want you to get to know us. And you're also going to be working with your admissions team, myself, Marley, or Nate. And we would end up kind of helping you along the way, kind of answering all your questions with admissions, getting all your paperwork done. So I'm going to plug really quick here before I start taking questions, plug our future webinar. We're going to be doing another one on March 21st. Professor Jake Hoskins is going to talk about the role of MBA in the age of AI disruption. That's going to be another great one. We hope everybody can make it there. And if you can't, it's okay. If you RSVP, I will send you the recording of all of our webinars and get those put up on our YouTube. So with that, I want to answer any questions that we have here. So I'm going to go down the list, and Marley, you can let me know what I miss. Let's see here. First one, is it right that Oregon State has put some limitation in effect for Iranian students to apply for programs in this state? I have not heard anything about any limitations for any country right now. I think that everything has been open. I can look into it. We do have an office called our OIE, our Office of International Education. They're kind of up to date. If there was kind of any kind of federal, or state level implication put on certain groups or certain countries, they usually let us know. I have not seen any warnings. I have not seen anything, so it should be open to all. Does unofficial GMAT or GRE report suffice for application review stage and deadlines? So typically, yes. If you're a full-time applicant, we will accept unofficials. There are certain situations. There's been a lot of fraudulent documents circulating around certain countries, and ETS, for example, the people who run the GRE exam, they have been starting to send a lot of red flag warnings, and they do not encourage schools to look only at unofficial. So initial process, we will look at it. but really getting an official score report, especially from like the GRE and the GMAT, it's a nominal fee, and those official reports come to us very quickly. So we would encourage students to really get your officials in, but to kickstart the process, we will look at unofficials. And then another question, how about deadlines? So deadlines for both programs. We have an early action deadline right now for both programs, as it's basically you want to get your application in before May 1st. If you're the MBA for Professionals program, there's a scholarship involved with that. It's a $10,000 scholarship. And then there's other different scholarships for our full-time program. But you want to get if you're an international student, you want to get that application in as soon as possible. And the reason being is that you need to give yourself time for the visa process, because it's oftentimes not the university holding you up, it's getting that visa appointment. So getting all the paperwork done early so that we can get an I-20 process so you can work on your visa, that's usually the holdup. So you want to get documents in as fast as possible, even though our deadline is May 1st. International applicants, ASAP. I would tell you to get your documents in as soon as possible. Is there any international students deadline window to apply? So we just talked about that. How soon does the admissions office start to process the application post deadline? So we are very, very quick. I would say we're one of the quickest in the business. If you get your application done and you interview with us, we're usually 10 days or less getting your decision back to you. The only thing that would hold that up is like right now there's this internet kind of AT&T across the US right now had some problems with their internet. There's been some cyber attacks, but outside of that kind of wonky stuff that's going on, we're very quick. We want to process applications quickly. We want to give you your scholarship in hand as fast as possible. So if you get all your documents in and you're contacting, say, hey, all my documents are in, odds are with less than 10 days. And sometimes it's as quickly as 3 days. So very quickly. And let's see. What is the school's spirit when it comes to non-business applicants? Are they welcome as much as business students? What is the? Yes. So like Marley had mentioned, you do not have to have any sort of business background. Okay. We really start from ground zero in both programs. You have, it's very, if you look at the students that come to us, in fact, Marley was a biology major before she came in to get her MBA, and she could tell you all about that. The MBA was nothing that was in her sights when she was getting her biology degree, right? But this happens for many people. We get people that they've been trained as engineers their whole life, and they come back to get their MBA because now all of a sudden they're going for a management or leadership position they've been put into, and they don't have those skills. It's not a skill that they were acquired. Now all of a sudden, you know how to do your expertise, whatever that is. We have nurses that come back. We have doctors. We have lawyers, you name it. And whatever skill set you have, being a manager, being able to pull that trigger and make decisions, defend your decisions and present and communicate, those are not skills that everybody is, born with, or if you're not practicing those skills, you're going to be able to walk into those situations and make those big decisions. And so we put you in those situations in both of our programs. So we highly encourage all students from any background, any major, to look at this MBA program. And then what is the theme of the school in this regard? Okay, so we talked about that. How can I access the past webinars? So that is another great question. So let's, Marley, are you still with me here? Because I'm going to go ahead. If you could, I'm going to put in the everyone email. I'm going to put my email here, and I want you guys to email me because I can send this out, because if in case I can't find it right now, unless Marley, you can find it quickly. I think I sent you the YouTube link. I know I sent it to Nate earlier, but I'm going to put my contact information so that I can email it to you quickly. So whatever I don't answer here, this is my email, and then this is my cell number, and I'm going to put my WhatsApp number as well. That's my cell, and then my WhatsApp is the same as my cell. Give me one sec. And then I will go ahead and find that YouTube channel, and I can send you that link, and all of our past webinars will be on there. So I want to make sure, was there another question? Let's see. We have transcripts, scholarships. Let's see, past webinars. And last but not least, is there any fully funded scholarships available? What is the range to the scholarships? So yes, scholarships range basically from $15,000 all the way up to full tuition. If you're a full-time applicant or applying to the Early Career Change Program, MBA program, that is the program for international students as well. Unless you have a work visa or a green card, you do not qualify for the professionals program. You have to apply to the full-time program. That's our program that gives out F1 visas. In that program, you're required, and all, even domestics for that program, are required to take the GRE or the GMAT exam. The higher you score in those exams, the better your grades, how you do in your interview, mostly going to be basing the big scholarships off of how well you do in the exam. So think 88th percentile and higher. So in the GRE, you want to score above 165 in the quant and the verbal section of the GRE. If you take the GMAT exam, the old GMAT scores would be like 710 and up or 720 and up. And that really equates to both tests. You want to be above that 88th percentile. So that will put you in that full tuition scholarship range. Understanding that we do not cover housing costs, health insurance, those types of things. Our scholarships only go towards tuition. And then official transcripts. Official transcripts are a must. We do not need them for the initial admissions process. Unofficial transcripts work just fine, and we can get, as long as we have your official transcripts before you matriculate, before actual classes start, that's what matters to us most. So through the admissions process, unofficial transcripts are okay. If you're an international applicant, we use an evaluation tool through WES, and they're the ones who our school has recommended students go through to get their transcripts evaluated and send us. And you can, again, send us the unofficials of those, and then the officials can come in before you actually start classes. And yes, you can upload PDF transcripts directly to the application when you guys are applying. Let's see, other questions. Any recommendations on how to approach the program's personal statement, essay? What are some do's and don'ts, and can I share it? Absolutely. So the beauty about our personal statement, the question's kind of pretty, it's pretty simple. It's what are your short and long-term goals? Why do you want an MBA? Those are kind of the prompts to the question. And so what I tell students is be yourself. What we don't want to see is a one sentence in your personal statement saying, here's what I want, and that's all it is. We want you to elaborate a little bit. This is a chance for you to kind of share some information about yourself, maybe some experiences that you've had or things that you're looking forward to, things you want to accomplish. That's a great time to put it in that essay. And that essay does not have to be, 4 pages or 5 pages long. It could be 1 page, a succinct, very, so I'm not saying the word correctly tonight, but it could be very simple, and it could be straightforward. I've seen them, like I said, as long as 4 pages, but most of the time, really all we need is a page, and we're looking to figure out what makes you tick, what are you trying to accomplish? And so my whole advice would be yourself. If you keep it, simple, and you answer the questions on the prompt, that's what we're looking for. Let's see, webinar should be found while I'm at YouTube page here. Oh, did Marley, were you able to find that YouTube? Okay, perfect. So I have to go through WES evaluation for enrollment, sir. I have a master's degree already. So typically, we ask for students, international applicants, to go through WES, but we also have the ability to waive that. And so without seeing your transcript, without seeing the information in front of me, I can't answer that question. We usually want to see what you have first, but typically the university would like students to go through WES. And then we would just have to see if we can ascertain the information that we need through the transcript that you've given us. But typically we want a translated into English transcript that shows us the grades that we understand, do the classes mesh up. And WES does a great job of kind of doing that breakdown for us. And they're really quick. Within 10 days or 8 days, once students upload those, we get that information back. So not to say that it's required for everybody. We put it as a general requirement. And then as we look at the individual, if we can waive it, we will. If we can't, we'll let you know we really want that WES transcript. Let's see. Does the school have any positions for 20-hour work week university jobs? Yes, absolutely. So for international students, all you can do is work 20 hours per week. That's the maximum. And there's all kinds of jobs across the university. So, jobs as simple as working in the cafeteria, so jobs that have to do with graduate assistantships, where you're actually working with a professor, working on projects, or you can work as a tutor. There's paint crews on campus, you name it. So there's lots of different jobs, different roles, depending on, what you're doing. If you're an international student in our full-time program, you need to work, there are positions available. So Marley, have I pretty much hit up all the, or answered all the questions? Yeah. Were there any other questions for anybody that's on here? And I guess I should stop sharing my screen. Maybe that would be a little easier as I'm reading my questions. You bet. So, we really appreciate, we went a little over tonight, but you know what? We really appreciate you guys coming to this. We will also send this recording out. So if there was anything you missed, you'll get it again. And then we're going to have another webinar on the 21st. We invite you back, and we would love to have more questions. And I don't mean to kick you out, but one last chance. If any other questions before we let everyone go? Absolutely. Patience is our thing, right? So no, we really appreciate your questions. So this is good because, inevitably the questions you have, there's probably going to be a lot of the similar questions from others. So thank you for showing up. Marley, appreciate your time as well. And have a good evening, everyone.